Don't skip a second. Watch and listen to the story until the very end. The forest hides the truth in the final breaths. Chapter 1. The Road That Forgot Us. We were 5 when the road gave up pretending to be a road. The forest pushed in strange, haphazard shoulders of char and new growth, as if it had both died and been born again in the same hour. We had junk food, 2 coolers that sweated through bent ice, and the kind of arrogance you need to ignore warning signs peppered with bullet holes. Felix drove because he collected reasons not to stop. Mara sprawled in back with her boot stuck out the window, daring branches to take them. Lynn kept whispering facts she'd read about fire ecology, how ash resets the soil and makes room for what comes next. Theo filmed everything, even the way my hands shook at the road shoulder too close to a drop. Me? I told myself I was here to get a clean breath. City air had turned me into a man who hears every machine in the walls, every elbow in a pipe. Up here, the wind would do the talking. Up here, I would hear nothing and know that nothing wanted me. The tower rose out of burn like a rib torn from a giant. Old fire lookout. 3 flights of stairs where the first was stapled to the second with rust and hope. Across from it, a meadow where the grass was the color of old teeth. Someone had left a box near the base, a decayed wooden trunk facing the tree lean like an altar too tired to protest. Lynn was first to say it. Feels like someone forgot this place, and like the place returned the favor. It wasn't dark yet, but the sunlight had the thinness of a secret. Something about the sky made me whisper even though I wasn't scared. Felix laughed at my hush. Theo panned the camera in a slow arc, catching the tower, the meadow, and our faces in their least cautious light. Let's camp at the base, Felix said. Climb in the morning. Make the top our breakfast table. I looked up the crooked stairs, then back at the trunk. The trunk had a brass plate that glinted through a smear of black. I wiped it with my sleeve. Under the soot, it said, 17. 17. As if a catalog had once had room for it. 17. As if that number belonged here more than we did. Chapter 2. The thing that should have stayed. We opened the trunk because that is what people like us do when the world draws a curtain. Inside were oddments. The kind you'd sweep into a box on the worst day of your life. A melted compass pucker like a torn ear, a length of cable looped through a ring of iron with a broken clasp, and a leather strip dead enough to crack if you looked at it too hard. Mara lifted the ring. It was heavy in a way I felt in my teeth. The clasp had been bent like a jaw yanked sideways. Theo filmed the close-up while Lynn said, "That looks like part of harness, or an anchor point. Logging? Firefighting." Felix, ever unhelpful, souvenir, he slipped the ring over his belt like a joke. It thudded dumbly against his hip. The forest did not change. The air did. That's the only way to say it. The very practice of breathing had the grit of a bad idea. We made camp. We did the ordinary rituals humans use to keep the night from knowing their names. Tents rose like weak teeth. We burned damp with that hiss back at us. We toasted marshmallows until they caught, black bubbles cracking like punctured lungs. Theo filmed our hands in the snack bags and sky adjusting frame by frame to absence. It came in that absence long before the dark. I heard it between Lynn's facts and Felix's jokes. Something tabulated our sounds, counted them, subtracted them. At dusk, the meadow shivered. Something tall moved at the tree lean, and then didn't. I told myself I had seen a tree decide to lean. Mara said to stop staring at nothing. It makes nothing feel important. That night, I dreamed a sequence like a training film. A man climbing, a belt slipping, a ring half-fastened, a beating heart that measured each second like an auditor. The ground hit me in the dream so hard that I woke with grit between my teeth and the taste of iron in my mouth. Felix snored. The ring tapped his belt with each breath, a metronome both patient and disgusted. Somewhere out there, something adjusted to stand. Chapter 3. Footfalls that do not belong. Morning scabbed over the dark like a bruise. We climbed the tower because we said we would. The stairs confessed each footstep with a scream of old nails. At the top, a hatch coughed up a room pure of anything except light and scraps of weathered maps. Theo ran the camera along a dead radio. Lynn found a logbook with entries that ended before I was born. The final page had a scrawl that started straight and derailed into a tear. Felix hooked the ring over a nail as if to prove a point. The nail tore free. The ring thudded through a map, and the tower shuddered in a way that suggested regret. Mara said she'd go down first to make coffee. Her boots framed the steps for a second, then slipped away. In the next breath, her voice reached us from below, but not from the bottom, from the meadow. "Guys," she called too calmly, "did one of you mess with the tents?" We hadn't. From above, I saw the zipper teeth on her tent pulled so far back they looked dislocated. The coolers have been set in a circle. Our bags have been emptied, not dumped but arranged in a spiral like the ear of a giant listening flower. In the center, the ring's cable lay coiled as a question mark. We went down fast, too fast for stairs. The tower is a machine that punishes haste, and by the time my boots hit dirt, my lungs were a forge. The meadow had a new trail cinched into it, a narrow line pressed by weight, not by wheels, too even, too calm. "What animal?" Theo asked. Lynn swallowed. "Something bipedal. Heel to toe. Too heavy to be deer. Not a bear." She looked at me to see what the man in the group would say. I shrugged, because I had run out of jokes years ago and had never learned a new language for terror. We followed the trail into the pines, a procession of people pretending not to be a procession. The line led to a stump too black for this century. On top of the stump was a cairn of river stones, carefully balanced. At its base, there was a squarish impression in the ash with four holes punched neat into its corners, as if something had once been bolted there. Lynn touched the holes like someone reading Braille. "Mounting plate," she said. Something was taken. Behind us, the ring thumped in the meadow where Felix had dropped it. It hadn't rolled. It hadn't bounced. It had been lifted and set down. The sound was motion. The sound was punctuation. That was when the forest tried out a sound it had not made for us yet. A step, long, then long again, as if the earth itself practiced walking. It halted where we had camped, took the measure of our circle, and then continued toward where we stood breathing on a stump that had held a memory as if it were a lock. Mara whispered, "We need to go." The meadow, the tower, 3 breaths away. We did not move. When you know your prey, your bones remember an older animal that learned stillness before it learned speed. Chapter 4. The Hush That Hunts. We split, because fear divides even good bread. Theo and Lynn took the trail around the tower toward the road. Felix and Mara grabbed what they could and went straight for stairs. I hesitated. The hush swung between the trees like a pendulum. Whichever way it pointed felt like the worst way. I trailed Felix and Mara. Halfway up, Mara looked down and froze. Halfway up is the worst place to be when the ground moves. Only the ground hadn't moved. The tall thing had stepped out from the pines to the meadow's edge. It was not the biggest thing I've ever seen, but it was the most absolute. Shapes like this don't ask questions. Shapes like this are answers. Its head was made of what looked like a cowl of old insulating cloth tarred stiff. The kind of person would wear to protect against sparks that stopped caring about skin. Over that cowl, plates of rusted metal had been wired and tied like excuses. Its chest was the rigid, inflated permanence of a man who died with his lungs full. Around its neck, where a ring and cable should have been, there was only a scar of emptiness, as if the missing weight had taken the weight of its name with it. Mara did not scream. She said Felix's name, how you might set a glass down. Felix went still, his hands spread. The thing stepped up to the tower. The steps did not shake. It had no interest in drama. The ring lay at the base of the first stair. It bent to take it. Its gloves were not gloves at all. They were hands that had learned from heat how to hold without mercy. When it straightened, the ring hung where a ring is meant to hang. The clasp clicked, not tight, but committed. All of this took a slice of time thin enough to see through, but thick enough to cut us. Then it looked up, not to us, past us. It looked up the tower to a point where it would ended and the skies started, and seemed dissatisfied by how easily the eye could slip from one to the other. Felix moved first. He tried to pull Mara past himself, as if he could reverse priority by rearranging bodies. The tower disagreed. Steps do that. They express who has a right to pass not by intention, but by physics. Felix slipped around her. His foot punched clean through a rotten slat, and he went to his knee with the shock of it. He grabbed for the rail. The ring snagged the wood. He hung on his belt, and the belt took that personally and failed. The thing was with him before I could say his name. It reached up, did not yank, did not toss, did not rave. It simply reattached the weight that had declared itself missing. Felix made a sound I will spend the rest of my life not wording. Then the thing stepped back as if embarrassed by the neatness. Mara tried to come down to him. I pulled her up. I don't remember choosing to. That's what self-preservation is. Agreements the body makes without consulting the soul. We ran into the room at the top. The tower's map-flayed skin gave us nothing to hide behind. The hatch was a mouth, insisting there was no up left to climb. Below, the thing placed a hand on the stairs and began to ascend with the certainty of a schedule. Silence is mass. It pressed on my ears until my heart had to work twice as hard just to register itself. I knew then this was not a ghost in the way people mean. This was a worker who had been underpaid by life and intended to collect by ledger. Then, from the far trees, a whistle, not careless, not friendly. A single note drawn through 2 fingers in a lifetime of practice. The thing paused. It turned its head as much as that cowl would allow. The whistle again. Then a voice, a woman's, rough with use and quiet with age. "Here," she called. "Here, boy." The thing left the tower like a man deciding to finish the job he started before lunch. It went to the voice. Mara and I breathed as if breathing would bring back our debt. We did not wait to say thank you. We went down, slow, then faster than our names. We hit the meadow like drop tools and ran toward the whistle's fading memory. And right then, I knew this wasn't over. Rescue, like fear, only knows how to divide. Chapter 5, The Woman Who Tended the Absence. She was shorter than the brush, a shape made out of olive cloth and resolve. The woman stood by a game trail, cut so clean it looked like a sentence diagram. She held a flare that coughed pale smoke, not bright enough to promise anything. Her hair was a color too stubborn to rot. Her eyes were a ledger, and we were written in a strange ink. "You too," she said. "Come, keep to my steps." We did. Behind us, the thing goes to the tree not as a hunter, but as a habit. It would not sprint. It would not tire. It would count. The woman led us to a clearing stubble with the bones of some old structure. Pipes, a concrete pad, a half-eaten metal cabinet. The cabinet had a plaque, long since blind, that must have once listed rules for people who believe in signs. She used the cabinet like an altar. Inside, there were items as deliberate as the ones in the trunk. Coiled wire, a bundle of dried moss, a shallow dish of salt, 3 iron nails, a jar that held a set of dog tags so corroded I couldn't tell if they were letters or lichen. She lit a stick of something that smelled like sap and thunder. She set the nails in the dish like a compass rose and poured salt around them in a circle. "Stand outside it," she said. "You can't afford what standing inside it costs." She didn't look at us when she spoke, as if her voice were a tool and eye contact would dull it. Mara made a sound that intended to be a question and landed as a plea. "What is that?" "An old fix for new mistakes," the woman said. "He listens. He always did. He learned to listen to orders. Then the orders stopped. The listening didn't." "Who is he?" I asked, and my voice betrayed the little boy who used to pretend to sleep when the grown-ups talked about disasters on the news. She looked past me, past the trees, past the burned sky to a morning none of us could reach. "He was a helper," she said. "He became a hinge. Something gave way. Something was taken. The badge that told him who he was. And like all good workers without their badge, he has to ask everyone he meets if they've seen it. He doesn't have a voice left for asking, so he shows them the question." "The ring," Mara said, barely daring to name it. "Yes." The woman's mouth thinned. "If you take it, he wakes to come correct a record. If you put it back, he doesn't forgive. He only remembers. Memory is heavier than forgiveness." "Will he stop?" I asked. She shook her head. "He doesn't do stopping. He does finishing." I thought of Theo and Lynn on the road. I thought of Felix, whose last sound had not been a voice. I thought of the tower, the map room, how the wind there had nowhere safe to go. All of these thoughts became one thought with a hard shell. I should return the ring to the place where it was bolted. "I'm going," I said. "I'll put it back." Mara grabbed my wrist. "Don't." The woman regarded me as if weighing whether words were worth the price. "You can return it," she said. "You cannot make it before he does. You can only make it with him." In the trees, branches rearranged themselves in that cruelly patient way the tall thing had of being nothing, and then being very much. The woman snuffed the flare with dirt. "Go," she said to us. "Straight to your guilt. Don't cut across it. That only makes it last longer." Chapter 6. The Return and the Receipt. We did not run to the tower. We were admitted to it by the same logic that had invited us before. We wanted to be where the last clean view of the world had once been catalogued. The ring had found its way back to the thing's neck. I was not sure if taking it now would be theft or repentance. At the base of the stairs, I turned. The tall shape waited at the border of the meadow, where the burned grass made an honest edge. It did not posture. It did not advance. It understood something I was only learning, that a man will bring himself to his reckoning if you hand him his own map. We climbed. We complained. Air held its breath to see if we deserved ours. In the room, the same dead radio sat like an old law. I found the mounting plate we'd seen by the stump, a twin, but not a match. There were holes in the floor where something had been ripped away. I put my fingers there and felt the tower tell me what it remembered. Weight tension, a man's last appointment with gravity. I took off my belt, which was not built for anything but holding back a stomach. I looped it through the ring at the thing's throat while he watched from below. He did not move. He allowed it, as if curious what I thought belts were for. The leather squealed. My teeth hurt again. "Help me," I told Mara. We threaded the belt through the holes in the floor, the buckle scraping like a rat in a wall. The ring lay on the map, as if expecting coordinates. I set over the holes. It was a bad fit, which is the same as most apologies. We tightened what we could. The belt lay flat. Trying to be a strap, it wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. I looked down into the stairwell. He was there because he was always there. I waited for him to step onto the first slat and end the lesson. He didn't. He waited. He wanted me to understand that there are customs even among the silent. If you intend to make a thing right, you must also be prepared to be measured by the thing you claim to honor. I leaned out of the hatch with the ring in my hands and spoke as if words could find a seam in the cowl. "It's back," I said. "It's back where it belongs." He put one foot on the step. We groaned. I threaded the ring under the holes and yanked, aligning it as closely as I could with the geometry that had been decided by men who believed their drawings would keep the world from folding up. The second foot, a second groan. The map tore around the ring like paper resisting a nail. I swallowed my fear like a hot coin. I did not have a voice left for bargaining. I had to work. I pulled. The belt creaked. The ring settled and shuttered the tower from roof to ground. It met its place like a lock that recognized the key it had forgotten it wanted. He stopped, his head tilted. A stillness fell that was different from the hush of before. The stillness had edges. It could cut a throat without entering the room. "Please," Mara said. Not to him, to the air that judges fools and the living. He took a step back, then another. He stood in the center of the meadow as if the earth had chalked an X there and written his name under it. He reached up with two slow, careful hands and touched the emptiness under his throat where the ring had been, now replaced by the pulsing ghost of it. He held nothing. He held it like something holy. Then he turned, not to go, but to orient. He faced the line toward the stump, toward the cairn, toward the ash where the mounting plate's ghost lay. He began to walk, not away from us, not at us, but on his own axis, like a needle aligning to a magnet the earth had buried under all its other secrets. We waited until he was a figure more idea than man. We descended. The woman was gone from the clearing of pipes. Theo and Lynn were not at the road. Our coolers had been set back in a line, right where we left them in our first foolish hour. The 10 zippers, rewoven by unseen hands, lay quiet. The camera sat on the steps, its battery dead. its last recorded image a white square full of the shape of breath. We left as the day failed to choose whether to brighten or dim. At the edge of the forest, where logging scars pretended to be paths, I looked back. The tower stood inside its own memory. A movement at its top? No, not movement. The absence of movement. A pause long enough to feel personal. In the truck, the road remembered us now that we were fewer. No joke cut through the air. No fact saved us. Mara slept in the uncomfortable posture of a person who has promised herself she will not dream. I drove. I kept my hands quiet on the wheel. We reached the first town like people who have been delivered by a system they do not understand. I turned the keys over, and they became stupid metal again. I told the first officer, who would listen, that there were people still out there. I told him about a worker who hadn't finished. He nodded the way men nod when the world demands a specific form, and they are the wrong shape. Back home, I can feel him some nights, a pressure drop inside my ribcage. I hear how the earth steps when it has remembered which way to lean. On my desk is a drawing I made of the ring and the holes and the map that tore and the line that led to the stump and the numbers that seed everything with meaning even when they shouldn't. In the corner I wrote, "The only note that matters. Do not take what keeps a name in place. If you ever go there, walk softly past the tower. The meadow will forgive you if you never step into it. If you find a ring where no ring should be, leave it. If you hear a step that is not yours, keep counting your breaths, not his. He doesn't stop. He finishes. That is the only kind of mercy the forest can stand to keep." If this story kept you with the lights on, subscribe to the channel, activate notifications so you don't miss the next tale, give the video a like, leave a comment with your theories, and share it with someone who thinks the woods are quiet.